Okay, so this is the first panel of DigiCom. The topic of today is developing digital roadmaps for the next 12 months and beyond that, right? What we refer to digital roadmap is basically those steps of initiatives that we need to put in place to ensure that our digital transformations are successful. Before we start and I share with you the structure and the agenda of the panel, let's start with a round of introductions. Myself, I'm Paula Freire. I'm the CIO of Ameropa Commodity Trading Company. And now I pass it to my colleagues for some introductions.
Hello. Hi, I'm Jay Reynolds, IT Managing Director at Castleton Commodities, and I run all of our global IT systems.
So Harry Knott, I'm Chief Business Architect at CoreEcha, which is a merger between Core, which was a spin-out of Brady, and ECHA, which are software commodities building trading risk management software for the commodity space.
Dirk Robers, I work for Cargill in EMEA. I do digital and business transformations.
I'm Stephen Fletcher, the Chief Commercial Officer of Access Marine. We are a SaaS-based software and data analytics company, 25 years old this year, providing services into the dry bulk, wet bulk, container, and various other shipping sectors.
Hi, I'm Richard Williamson, the CEO of Gen10. We provide cloud-based commodity supply chain and risk management solutions. Also our 25th birthday. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Okay, so how we have distributed the topic, right? We are going to have three kind of sections. Let's see, it's a 45 minutes, 50 minutes panel. Let's see if we can cover all of them. I'm here with my analog papers. So the first section will be about vision and strategies. Then we will focus on what we consider to be the three key initiatives, which is around commodity trading and risk management solution, AI, and data analytics. And then if we have time, we will finish with some sharing about culture, organizational structure, and talent, right? Which type of talent we need to ensure that our digital transformations are successful. So on top of that, we have prepared some questions for the audience. I think we can already start by the first one, which is about what do you think are the biggest priorities regarding digital transformation in the next 12 months? Let's see if the three topics we selected are also the three that you consider to be of your interest, right? But let's go ahead and let's start with the first question, which is 2024 has been an eventful year in energy and commodity trading. And I think we saw some insight this morning in the panel. What stood out for you and how did you adapt to this rapidly changing environment? And I don't know, Dirk, if you would like to start with this question?
Sure. So Cargill is a large company, but beyond that it's just a large company, it's also dealing with a lot of difficulties it starts at a farm, and it ends up on your plate. So, and everything in between we kind of meddle with. So if you design a roadmap, you cannot forgo the end-to-end part of it. Mm-hmm. So if you want to zoom into something, that's fine. But if you lose sight of that you're actually solving an end-to-end equation, then you might be losing out on certain optimizations that you have in your entire supply chain. So they all talk to each other. I like to talk about daisy chains because that's kind of what it is. And I think in designing a roadmap, you're not designing just the individual stages. It's that end-to-end part, and it starts with the end. So it needs to end up in a plate or in a bin of someone, of our customers. So how do you solve that? And then you work backwards.
Okay, very interesting. Steve, if you would like to add something around that?
About the roadmap?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, basically, we've been around for 25 years, so we've accumulated lots of clients. I think we have about 2,000 clients across all of our sectors, so we do listen to a lot of different demands, and I think, you know, listening to them gives us a pretty good direction of which way we need to go in terms of building our roadmap. So in terms of our internal digitalization roadmap, that's pretty much driven by what we need to do to serve our clients better. So by listening to them, we more or less know what we need to automate internally in order to provide better services to our clients. We know what, what type of data we need to collect automatically, what development we need to do on our internal roadmap so that we can collect things, manage things, normalize data in an automated way rather than the old traditional manual ways, which changes the way we organize ourselves to provide better services to our clients. That's what drives us.
Okay. Very interesting. And Harry, do you have anything to add on also the adaptability of the changing environment in which we are currently?
Yeah, so I think the one thing we've seen over the last few years is that there's so many things that change in a way that you wouldn't really have expected or anticipated. So kind of conversely, you have to learn to anticipate change itself. And so building flexibility into the systems, into the software, into the processes, and into the roadmap process is really key. And to agree with that point, the engagement with customers in that process is absolutely critical as a software vendor. Mm-hmm. The customers have their own roadmaps. We're providing software for a range of customers in a range of sectors across metals, across agricultural commodities, across energy, power and gas. So it's really essential for us to remain close to our customers, understand what their priorities are, and make sure they selected us, hopefully because our strategic priorities align with theirs. We are building our product, our technology in a way that is designed to align with what they want now, but also in the future. And building the kind of flexibility into the software and how we implement it is really key to make sure that we allow customers to take control of that as well.
Excellent. So customer-centric approach, I see, for all of you. Let's see if we can come back to the results, if we didn't lose them, the results of the first question. Is that possible? The first polling question. Okay, so what do we see? Data analytics, 45%, followed by artificial intelligence and commodity trading and enterprise resource planning. So that's good because this is exactly the three key areas we are going to tackle. As a second question, and Richard, maybe you can have a try at this one, is can you share some successful examples of roadmaps or digital transformation that you can share with the audience?
Yeah, sure. I think my favorite one, it was with a large rubber trading company based out of Singapore. They had several offices around the world, and rather than take that big bang approach, we would focus on one particular business unit, get everything sorted out, find all of the nuances, talk to them also about what they know of what the other companies are doing to try and keep everything in mind as we're going along. And getting that sort of focused approach with a core group of people to prove the concept, to get buy-in, to show an example to the others so that they're looking forward to the change as opposed to dreading it and running away from it. So that first process was around about 3 months to get that going. And all of the nuances that are companies, well, group specific, as well as what they needed in North America, they were all sorted out. You then switch over to Europe, over in Holland. That then came down to 6 weeks because everything's all there, and then there's a few European-related things that we needed to take care of. And by the time we got to Malaysia and China, I mean, Shanghai was fantastic. It was during COVID lockdown. We were all work from home. Our power users and our champions at the organization, they were all working from home, and everybody in Shanghai were working from home. And we were able to implement a CTRM system in Mandarin in those conditions.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So, yes. I mean, it was a proud moment for us. It kept the adrenaline going. But it's just taking that sort of a methodical approach of not trying to scare the horses at the very beginning and to try to show a bit of a track record, get people from outside looking in. Is it working? They're curious of the change, and they're glad that it's not happening to them first, maybe. But if you find that group that want to move forward, go for those first, and then you'll see the others, that change management process, which is as key as the product
And
sometimes.
I guess they acted as champions for you now to the rest of the organization, business process owner. I think it's a very critical role.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
successful
And to be
DSP.
honest, we didn't do any training for those last ones. It was in-house training of the staff there in Malaysia and Shanghai. So it was a real tick in the box in terms of scalability for deploying a cloud software across multiple jurisdictions.
Oh, and the observation about COVID is also very relevant. I remember with COVID came, we thought, okay, everything needs to stop all the transformation, all the projects and everything, and then suddenly you see yourself being able, I mean, not myself, but our group of people being able to deploy SAP in South Africa, where at the beginning of COVID you say, okay, we cannot do anything for months. And at the end, everything was done. We managed our objectives. So also, a very interesting lesson from how much you can be resilient, how much you can achieve when you even think it's not possible, right? Steve, I don't know if you would like to share with us also some successful cases of transformational initiatives.
I think so. I mean, we've been doing machine learning, or let's say extracting, say, unstructured data from emails and various other sources for the longest time for some of our clients. And I think in the last couple of years, we realized that can be applied in many other places. And we've been collecting lineup reports from agents like many of our clients do. And I think in the last year and a half, we redeployed that engine, and we now have a very robust model and procurement, so we're getting from pretty much everybody, and we automatically read lineup reports into our trade data database. And I think that's massive, simply because a lot of our clients tell us they're doing it themselves, so there's a lot of repetitive work going on, and we managed to do that. And I think that helps us transform internally as well, because we had 40 people doing that manually for a couple of years, and now they're doing higher value tasks. I think that's great.
Thank you very much. So the next question, Jay, maybe you can share here, is about a very interesting point. How do you manage, or how do you prioritize initiatives, and how do you manage the alignment of those?
Sure. So, I mean, obviously, everyone can't have everything. There are limited resources. And the way that we've tried to tackle that is really by saying, from an IT perspective, to partner with the business. It's probably nothing you haven't heard before, but I think it's been very helpful as we accelerate into a digital transformation world to enable each of our sort of functional leads that are doing the trade operations work principally in the mid and back office to have a product ownership type role. So if you've the software side of things, you're very familiar with running things in a product model, and we at Castleton have been trying to apply that to the business world, and therefore the product owner's vested interest and actually gets to basically do the prioritization. So it takes some of the burden of that off of a sort of IT leadership, and then the alignment is inherent because they're already the one making the decision. So for me, from a digital road mapping perspective, the whole point of transitioning from an IT strategy view top down to digital is that what we mean when we say digital is actually products and solutions with business outcomes, as opposed to I'm going to go, oh, we're going to deploy Python or something like that. Doesn't make any sense. You need to have actual outcomes, and so.
And on the role of the product owners, how do you see that? Is just one product owner that takes ownership of the roadmap, or it goes by function, or is more by, I mean, talking about best practices, how do you see this working best?
So what makes that work is by not, essentially, I know the whole session's called a digital roadmap, but almost trying to not have one. So having a process that gives that digital enablement to each product individually. Mm-hmm. So obviously there's always going to be some macro coordination, but trying to drive as much of it as possible to the individual level so that they drive their own initiatives.
Thank you, very interesting. Dirk, from your perspective, any sharings on this one?
Yeah, so roadmaps are tricky. As you say, you need to leave them a little bit of wiggle room, some fluidity. Some of your requirements will change over time as you mature in other parts. But there are still, you're building something. So you start with the foundations, then you go on to the middle tiers, and then you go on to deliver the outcomes to your users. For those users, prioritizing is all, because they only think in business case. What does it deliver in the end? And that's the tricky part. How do you sell, I'm driving a pylon down into the ground to carry the load of an entire building. Nobody takes the benefit out of that. But sometimes, we saw analytics and data coming up as prioritized number one. Yeah, so then you have to work with foundational elements like data storage, ERPs, those kind of things. Product owners like to skip over those. So that's where your macro kind of architecture comes in. That's where you start to steer. So it's a balance between leaving product owner. I think product ownership is a strong way to lead prioritization. However, you also need a strong architecture, and that's where the roadmap comes in. You need to know where you want to end up. So those are the three core components I kind of work with. What's the end route? Where do we want to be in 3, 5, 6, 7 years? And then work backwards. What's the macro picture look like? And then product owners actually have something to aim at. Otherwise, it's kind of everything goes and it's fun. We've all been in those sessions. Yeah, this is a great outcome. Nice bullet points that say absolutely nothing. That is something you don't want to see.
Absolutely, absolutely. Steve, anything else to add here, or anybody else that would like to reach out?
I was just thinking further to that point, and on the most popular, I was expecting AI, but maybe that's because it was answered on a previous question. But on the data analytics, why is that still a priority? And it's to your point, it's like we need to know where we want to end up, but you then have to go straight to origin. You have to go straight to the beginning and get that data collected in a nice, clean way. And if you have the data, if you're providing software that helps the end user with their day job and get them to do their job better together and collaborate, give them the tools that they need, then you get that data clean and you get it timely, so that data analytics is the easy bit. But it's like if you try to solve that data analytics part without trying to, I mean, it's a harder slog, of course, but you need, I think, that roadmap. There are some very good solutions out there that try to do the best, where you don't have time to look at how do you get a good contract in, how do you bring inventory from upcountry South America or something. But solve that initial problem. There's a lot of data cleansing and problems that go on there, but you need to focus on starting at the beginning, straight afterwards, right? And then building through so that you're not left hanging, I think.
Absolutely. Anybody else want to add anything else, Steve? Or?
Well, I agree with everything that everyone said.
Yeah.
I like the comment about the strategic roadmap and the long term.
We're aligned here.
And the long term over the 5 or 7 years. But I think what's key here is the only constant is change. And when, from our point of view, people want something today, and then 2 weeks' time they want something different, or maybe in 2 years' time. So you have to be flexible in your short-term tactical adjustments. Even though your long-term roadmap may change a little bit, but your short-term you need to be flexible.
Very good. So I have the next questions from the audience. This is a question that I think we do nearly every year, because the results are quite surprising, but let's see, I don't want to say anything. So this question, if we can put it to the audience, is how many commodity trading and risk management systems does your company have today? And the answers, hopefully you'll see them soon in the screen, is 1 to 2, 3 to 6, 7 to 10, or even more than 10, right? So let's see if the answers are similar to the previous years, or if we have some change here. Well, I think we have 0, yes, Excel, right? We have Excel. So, okay, I think there is quite an improvement, because at least in the past times we made this question, we have a high percentage of responses of more than 10 CTRM, so clearly we are on the right path now, right? 1 to 2, that's amazing. I wish I would work in any of those companies that only have 1 or 2 CTRMs. And then 3 to 6, 35%. Okay, so let's move now to our blog, Commodity Trading and Risk Management System. Harry, maybe you can help with this question. How do we ensure that we embed new technologies, innovation, changes into the current commodity trading and risk management solutions, that they stay up to date with the challenges we are facing?
So yeah, I think on that one we have to be talking to customers sort of about their future anticipations as well as keeping an eye on the market trends and what's going on in the market. But certain things kind of require more agility than you can build by, taking requirements in, building software, deploying it, releasing it. So I think part of the key to that is building this sort of adaptability into the software system itself. So you have to, as far as possible, anticipate the change and give the users the tools where they can control their own destiny of how they use the software, how they trade things, how they configure things. And I think you've got to be a bit careful with that, because at one extreme you have these systems where, it's like, oh yes, you can do everything, you just script it. And what that means is you get developers to write code, and you're basically developing a system on top of your system.
And then you need to support it.
And that, yes, it gets you out of a hole in some cases. It's quite powerful if you want to have an army of developers working on it, but it's not really taking advantage of a vendor software system. It's basically working around it rather than working with it. What we try and do is we build the kind of configuration tools into the software which are designed to be used by the end user. Some of the things, it's not going to be your average kind of user who's using it day in, day out. It's going to be a higher super user who can do those things. But one of my favorite things is when we talk to a customer and they go, oh yeah, we did this. Yeah, we just did it all ourselves. And we go, oh, do you want any help with that? And they go, no, we're good. And we find out what they've done. We see what they've done. It's like, oh, do you know what? That's a really great solution for that. You just did it yourselves. We never even, we didn't even think of that. Or we didn't think of, so those sorts of things. And with market changes, we've had some things recently, like precious metals. People introduce, new contracts where they're trading things which are based on purely recycled metal, and obviously the feed that goes into the refinery is not purely recycled. So you've got to manage this process where you're certifying how much of the output can count as recycled to be able to sell it to your customers. That's something that people using our software managed to set up without any core development from us. They configured it to do it like that. They set it up to do that. We gave them a little bit of help with some things, but that sort of thing is really important for people to be able to adapt when market changes or market opportunities come up like that. Similarly with stuff kind of looking a bit further forward, again, precious metals, tariffs coming in, people announce there are going to be tariffs on platinum, palladium, and then maybe they're not because they're deferred. People are sitting there sort of needing to know whether they're going to have to do things that fundamentally change the market and change how they trade this commodity. It may happen, it may not happen, but right now there are people in all these companies who are trying to work out, if it happens, assuming it will happen, how do I change my system and my processes to cope with a fundamental change in the market? And that's something, again, we've got good conversations going on there. The sorts of things that you can do in the system basically give you a solution to that. There might be several solutions depending on exactly what happens in the market and what does and doesn't happen. But the software doesn't need to change because the software has the configurability to adapt to those sorts of things, which is absolutely key to being agile as a company.
Excellent. Jay, would you like to add something on this, how the commodity trading or the systems that we have these days can adjust to these changes and to the new technologies?
Sure. So I think that there's kind of three pillars that you need, and the systems are definitely one of those, is working with whoever your partners are. Not 10 plus now, apparently only a couple, so that's good. Because they are listening to the market and listening to their customers and serve as an aggregation function to deliver broad-scale technology solutions. But you also need to be investing in the talent and kind of continuously, because the more that people move around the industry, when you get new talent in, they come and they bring other ideas in. And then I think the third thing is to sort of keep the learning environment up, which is a combination of working with advisory partners and coming to industry events like this, so that you really get that broad picture.
Excellent. So learning, talent, systems.
Yes.
Perfect.
I can keep going.
Richard, would you like to comment on this one?
I mean, technology today, the software landscape is so much easier to adapt to change. I mean, we learned the hard way. We used to have systems that were on servers, on premise, and it's not a very scalable operation. It's very expensive, very time consuming. But when we had the opportunity to move everything to the cloud, like truly to the cloud, it's like, what are the constants? What are the variables? What things can we get people to change themselves? But they will still need a P&L. They will still need contract inventory, etc. But fast forward to today, I think having something in the cloud, whether it's AWS or Azure, you have the access to such a wider ecosystem of new technologies, that ability to integrate. Integration is not as difficult as it used to be, and if you're able to deliver via the cloud as well, less disruption, more cost effective, etc. But it's that speed of agility, being able to try things quicker. Being able to break things quicker and then come back and see how we can fix them, before it gets to the client. But I mean, we'll talk a bit more about AI and stuff. But it is easy for us to integrate with a live container tracking around the world. And using the AI predictive ETAs, etc., but bringing it into the context of everything else that the logistics department need to do, and it affects the cash flow for the finance as well. And you're able to do that in weeks. New functionality where you're leveraging other things that are out there whilst keeping that core single code base. I mean, we have a single code base for 100+ commodities across ags, metals, and energy. And it's just that it's such a lovely new world being able to adapt and adopt at a good price point compared to what it used to be.
No, but this is a very... So please go.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I think there is a bit of a bifurcation in that if your technology platform is relying on more SaaS type vendors, multi-tenant, where they can roll out these kinds of solutions fairly quickly, then you can lean more heavily on that. I think that for a lot of us, we may have more legacy solutions where the vendor timeline to be able to deliver changes like that is just not quick enough. For me, it's figuring out which things are big enough that you have to get the vendor to solve and that you can wait, versus investing in the talent to have the agility to use hopefully good vendor APIs to interact with the product and build and supplement around them. That has to be part of your strategy if you want to react to these things quickly.
No, I think I fully agree. I think is embedding new technologies into your current applications, but also I think what you mentioned, it can be summarized about interoperability, right? To be able through APIs, latest technology, to connect all those surrounding systems that you can integrate and give you this extra layer of functionalities or the agility to adapt to changes. Steve, I see you
think
want
just to
say
add to
something.
that, in general, I think there's a trend now going where the vendor with the SaaS vendor today, if you like, we cannot carry all of the roadmap development requirements that our clients like. And I think the open API concept where our clients will be logging on and developing their own apps for their own requirements is definitely the way forward.
No, I think it's an absolutely critical technology for the integration of systems and to ensure we adapt to changes. Dirk, one thing for you. I'm sure you have one or more than one commodity trading and risk management solutions in Cargill. When implementing a CTRM, what are for you as final client the KPIs or the success indicators that you say, why I think this is a good implementation, I'm happy with what I'm having?
That's actually quite easy. It has to
Good,
do what
like
it promises.
closing the month and closing.
Yeah. No, it has to do what it promises, but it starts with us, right? So if we don't, I mentioned already, if you have those funny bullet points, we're data-driven, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. Come on, data-driven. Who cares? It should actually do something, right? Because our people are sitting there to either get an insight, have it make a decision, and either somebody else executes or they execute. those are the things that they're doing. They're not there sitting around, looking at data for data's sake. Nobody cares. So it should do what it promises. Then from an IT perspective, it should have some longevity. You don't go through all those kind of steps to have something just run for 2 years. You want to have it for a sustainable duration, right? So for us, that's an in-depth investment. So that goes into the account as well. And the other part is, it needs to make sense from a TCO perspective. How is it with serviceability? Do we do it ourselves? Does the vendor stay involved? Those kind of things, and that is for us kind of important. So is the user happy? Does it actually change something? We have less spend, less resources, whatever it is that we try to target, and then how does it fit in our architecture for the long duration, right? Those applications ingest, capture, and output. So that's maybe the final point we look at. How does it play with the other applications that we have? Does it play nicely? Now, luckily for most vendors, we use Excel excessively. So for any type of work. So that's kind of our pseudo ERP or CTRM, how you want to call it, that we have in the background, which everybody does. But yeah, that's a reality. It's a fact of life.
And Harry, from the other perspective, from the vendor perspective, what would you say this is the success factor you need to look at to say, wow, this is a good implementation, this is the CTRM that I need?
Yeah, so I think, the first question is the customer live? Right.
Well, that's already on time and on
Quite
budget.
soon after that, is the customer happy?
Yeah.
And I think you
But
have
what
to
do you think it makes a customer happy?
Well, okay, so there's various things, but also it's worth looking at, when you say the customer happy, in general, with an implementation of any size, there are a lot of stakeholders. And there's the business needs and there's the user needs. And I think one of the key things for an implementation project is you have to make sure that what you focus on and what you prioritize aligns with the business needs first, and the individual user needs second. And it's very easy to try and please individual users at the expense of potentially some of the higher value benefits. The other thing I think is really key, obviously you want to see efficiency gains, you want to see that you're doing stuff quicker, you're closing your books sooner, you're spending less time, you're needing fewer people to perform the same functions. Those are all good objectives from any software implementation project. I think you have to, if you step back and look at the process that people go through when they choose and implement a system, you go through first of all, you look at, okay, what do we need? We want all these things. You have a wish list, and we could do everything. And at that point, it's very sort of potentially big and open-ended and quite vague. And at that point in people's heads, it's everything. And then you get down to the reality of scoping a project, costing it, budgeting it, and putting some details onto a project plan. And that, by necessity, restricts it from everything that you could possibly want to a specific set of things. And first of all, you have to align that specific set of things with the business priorities to make sure you're spending a fixed amount of money, hopefully, and you will get the highest value things for the business, hopefully. You need to make sure that that is agreed and understood by everyone, because not everyone's going to get all the things that they hope they were going to get in that first phase, and they need to buy into that, and they need to understand why that is, so that when you push the button, you go live, and they didn't get their little widget for doing stuff, they understand that that wasn't a priority, and it's not it's not a personal thing on them. That just didn't make the cut. And I think also with a lot of these projects, your initial implementation project in your first go live is often the biggest one, and obviously the first one. But by necessity, often you sort of break down a bigger project into smaller phases.
Yeah,
so you have your go live and then
up.
subsequent phases. And again, the understanding and the buy-in from the users and the stakeholders on why we're doing those phases and why we're not doing everything all in one go, and why these things are happening in phase 2 or 3 and not phase 1. That's really key as well, because if people understand that and buy into that, then they will kind of push in the right
They know
direction.
when it's coming. There's a full transparency on the roadmap, right? What goes on the first day as a minimum viable product, or a bit more than that, and then when the other functionalities are coming.
And then just one more thing on that. So I think once you've then done the project and things have sort of bedded in and people have kind of taken a breath and kind of got a little bit back to their day jobs rather than being in project mode, it's really good to kind of revisit and look at what you've done and look at how it's gone in, how it's working compared with what you're expecting. Because in a lot of cases, the end result will be slightly different to what you imagined at the start. And that can result in a lot of things. Some of them positive. It's like, oh, we never knew that this thing was going to save this much time for those people. That's great. Other things, we thought this thing would then mean that we didn't need to have 6 people working in the logistics department. We still do because they're doing different things. So those things will inform, backwards looking, how did we do against, what we did, what can we learn for future? But forward looking, there might be some quick and simple things you can do to then tweak those things and adapt those things to make sure you get all the benefits that you're looking to get in. And if you don't have that feedback cycle, it's easy to kind of say, okay, project's finished. We said we're going to finish at the end of June, and it's the end of June, so right, everyone go back and do other stuff. And you don't realize the full benefits because you haven't finished off some of the things that you could have finished off quite easily.
What do you think, and if anybody has, how do you think from an implementation, from the go live of an implementation until the time in which you say, okay, now let's see if the benefits have been realized, how long do you think we need to give users? We are talking about 3 months, 6 months. Obviously, normally, my experience, when you go live with a system, everybody the first 2 months think we were better before, even if the before was a disaster, right? Because the first 2 months are always very difficult. So normally it's as of the 3rd or 4th month when things are stabilizing and then you are really seeing the benefits of an implementation. Anybody has an idea here or any experience on that?
I think a good one is how quick or how long does it take you to close your month end or your year end? I think that's a good metric. If you're doing it in a few days, whereas it was almost next month by the time you're able to do it, that's as good an indicator perhaps as you need, because if you are able to do that, that means that the contracts are in, it means that things are getting shipped, that the documentation is there, that invoices are being done, and that is a good sort of litmus test as to whether the rest of the organization is working, if you could close a month end quicker. Yeah.
But I think to the point of how long after the project should you then do that assessment, I think it's kind of a recurring thing. It's not just a one-off thing. Obviously, the one-off thing...
But you think you should start since the go live day plus one, or you need to give some time?
I think you need to give people some breathing space. People get project fatigue when, particularly users who need to be involved in UAT, they've been running their day job and they've been running stuff that they need to do on top of that. You need to give them a bit of a breathing space to do that. So I'd definitely allow 3-6 months for most things. There'll be some things that come up immediately to go, look, we see an opportunity here, or we see some pain still here, let's get this done now. But other things, if you give them some breathing space and then come back, they'll have had a bit of a time to get used to it, A, and B, sort of recover from the kind of extra workload of UAT.
Yeah, yes, I see.
I'm going to disagree. To me, I think it's entirely dependent on what your definition of benefits were at the start. And I firmly believe you should have definitions of done that are binary, and therefore the answer to the question is 0. That if you are live, then you will have achieved the benefits. So your definition of being live, I think, should be that you got rid of the old system, especially if the old system was Excel, as you mentioned. So to me, the definition of done on an ETRM, CTRM type solution is, am I using it and not using any Excel spreadsheets in doing my risk management, right? So I'm getting all my positions and risk from the system, and as the subledger for your GL, so you're doing your closing of your books, et cetera, from the system without any Excel in between. Is there going to be Excel on the edges? Always, for analytics. But that core processing, that, in my mind, should be your definition of done, minimum, to get benefits. And that you should be able to say yes or no when you're done.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. But I do think also you say that's the minimum level. That's the kind of, before you can say you're live, you have to have met those criteria. But there's a tail of other things and usability and nice to haves and stuff like that, which wouldn't form part of your definition of done. And those are the things that you need to kind of look at after the project.
Okay. Let's move now to the next block, which is artificial intelligence. We have another question for the audience, I think here is a little bit more about what is your preferred, if you have any, AI tool, and we have different options, Microsoft Copilot, ChatGPT, Gemini, Amazon Q, or others. I don't know here in our panelists, do you use generative AI? What is your experience? Which is your favorite generative AI tool, if you have any? Anyone wants to share about that? We, for example, in our company, we use Microsoft Copilot, but most of the people love ChatGPT, so we are forcing them into something.
Yeah, it kind of depends on the task that you have, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're coding, then Gemini 2.5 beats all others. If you're more into conversational, I want to have some news updates, you use Perplexity. If it's more, let's run a project and I want to build some, let's say, notebook, then you have ChatGPT, or you use Notebook LLM or LM from Google. It depends. Grok is quite nice because you can switch off all kinds of safeties, and then you get a more raw response. I think you should try them all. DeepSeek is fun as well. If you want to run them locally, you can use any of the other llamas that are around.
Our audience, with nearly 80% prefer ChatGPT. Then others, and then we have Copilot.
So if I was wanting to, as you say, a better than Google search, or help me with producing something, it's absolutely that. But if the tool that I want is going to help me integrate confidential proprietary data with some form of artificial intelligence, then ChatGPT would not be my go-to. It would be something like Amazon Q, where you can ring fence your stuff and still leverage off those LLMs, etc. So yeah, it's not. There isn't one AI tool, I guess.
Depends on the purpose.
It really depends on what you're trying to do. So that would be, in my opinion, like the worst case scenario if I'm dealing with my own confidential information. But yeah.
The worst case scenario is the preferred scenario. Yes. Okay. So Richard, now that I have you here, would you mind sharing with us some use cases about the application of artificial intelligence?
Sure.
Successful, hopefully.
I think to preface that, I think not just our job as vendors is perhaps to try to govern that hype cycle a little better, to move ourselves gradually towards that plateau of contentment and have a bit of an incline on it, rather than think, I don't know, AI is going to replace SaaS or something like that. And so finding some real world, tangible, things that provide value. It might not be the biggest value to the company, but it's going to be some value where you're able to get used to the technology, try it out, give you an opportunity to then think, well, how could I apply it to this now that we can do that, for example. So we've taken I wouldn't say it's certainly not conservative, but a practical approach to certain things. So it's around, data cleansing. We deal in a number of different origins. Let's say in cotton, for example, where there's a lot of data to do with every single bale of cotton that affects the price and affects other commercial decisions about it. And that data comes in all sorts of formats: PDFs, spreadsheets, scanned PDFs, etc. So applying AI to extrapolate that, clean it up. We used to be big flying the flag about standardization in industries, and that's how we're going to move forward as an industry in this digital journey. But what it's proving, it's showing promise, at least, in that we don't have to wait for an industry to standardize. We can use these tools that will standardize the data internally and then bring it into one place where I can then have my data analytics again becomes the easy bit. The tricky bit is getting that clean data at the beginning without having a bunch of people retyping something or other.
Absolutely.
I'll share it with the audience. But
Steve?
Exactly what Richard said. No, but it's, from our point of view, we're collecting a lot of data and normalizing it, and that's where we're putting most of our effort when you want to from an AI point of view, if that's a generic term that we'll use for that. I think, but in our applications for our clients, there's more demand now to sort of, off-the-shelf Copilots don't do the job. So, if you've used, your Microsoft Copilot, if you're not interacting with it, it's never going to be good enough for you. So some of the, let's say, user applications that we have, we're starting to use some, or experiment with some ideas that are going to actually take our users' behavior to suggest things for them in the application. Rather than them find it, we're going to suggest that for them. So that exists in the consumer world today. You know what happens, you're on Facebook or wherever you are, and it tells you, based on your behavior, what you're doing. So now in the applications, we're trying to bring some of that into the workflow. Rather than having people configure workflow, it's going to just use their behavior to suggest the right workflow for them.
Okay, excellent. So we move to the next block, the last block of this panel, which is around data analytics. And we have the final also question for the audience, which is around which roles or functions within the industry might be more significantly affected by emerging technologies. I think we are all thinking about which ones will be most affected by AI and its disruption capabilities, and we gave you a list of those: trading, the trading department, the risk management department, execution and logistics, accounting, or the alternative, I do not expect any relevant impact on the talent pool. While we are doing this, I have another question here which reads like this. What are some innovative use cases around trend recognition, weather impact assessment, or pricing strategy around data analytics? If anybody, Harry, maybe you want to share something about these use cases, or anybody else, obviously, after in the panel.
So actually, one of the kind of interesting things, I think, when we look at that and the application of AI against that, I actually think, from our point of view, I think the kind of order of benefit of AI models is, first of all, around our own build and test of our own software. So the benefit that we get and our customers get from better standardization, faster code building, standardized templates, more standardized automated testing, that's kind of the first thing. The second thing, I think, is around the operational processing. So kind of ties in with operations and logistics, automation of bringing in documentation, automation of confirmation matching, automation of business processes. I think that the kind of analysis of data and using that kind of comes at the end of the list of what we're finding at the moment. But one of the things we're doing there is we're working with some data vendors to basically provide some sentiment analysis on key markets that we work in. So there's a lot of data out there, using that data to provide some kind of summarization on the kind of market sentiment is one of the use cases that we're working on at the moment.
Very interesting. Any other thoughts about this?
The other bit is around, so you have the structured data of your commodity management system, your Excels or whatever, but there's that unstructured data that's really hard for CTRMs historically to get hold of. And if I think of the process of allocating inventories or open purchases to sales, there's some hard numbers like quality match, timing, location. These things is what CTRMs are doing to help you allocate the right stuff. But if at that same time it's asking, go check the demurrage clauses on the purchase contract, on the sales contract. Tell me if I'm exposed, the stuff that's really hard to get to. I mean, you can get it. You can go and find the contract and go and read them and then read the other one. But what AI can do now is it will go and find those contracts at the same time as you're trying to allocate to a sale. It will go and find them, and you can train it to come up with some really nice things in terms of, it's 15 days on the purchase, 10 days on the sale, you're exposed by this.
Yeah. Real-time
and
insight
there's
onto your
so
data.
much that can be done around that. So merging the structured data with getting that unstructured data, in the context of the structured data. I think there's loads of use cases where that could really benefit, and moving forward where we couldn't move forward so much without this new technology, I think.
Excellent. Anyone else? Any other thoughts? No? If not, we can. So we see that is execution and logistics. I think it was do you agree with that? Do you think execution and logistics will be the function that will be more impacted by new technologies? Jay?
Yeah, definitely. I think what he was saying that on a logistics side, some of these AI matching models where you can have an algorithmic that actually does a better job of trying to automate some of that instead of it being human with the 3 panels on a screen trying to put things together. On the trade execution side, I think that's everything going into it, whether you were talking about weather and forecasting trends. Yeah. That sort of pre-trade analytics, that's where I know we're investing just massive amounts of money on that side. That's where we feel like there's good differentiation to drive value out of these things, including the really, really unstructured data. I mean, a contract is at least sometimes following some sort of form. But where these AI models, I think, are really good is taking like massive documents and trying to distill them for you and give you some insights without having to go through some 200-page filing from some public utility commission or something like that. What do I need to highlight out of here that's what's changing that might affect my markets?
Thank you very much for sharing. Okay, last question. I think we need to finalize. It has been super, super insightful. The last question is more about organizational issues, right? How do you ensure cross-departmental collaboration, buy-in, that you maintain the right talent pool, which is one of the criteria that you say that are critical. Dirk, if you would like to share about this one. If you can give us the magic recipe to achieve that.
I think it was on the board earlier, right? So what do you need to get that going, and was all of the above? I think that's kind of true if you want to have it run for a longer time. But it starts with the leadership. If the leadership doesn't buy into it, they won't support it. It will become something on the side, and that's dangerous. So if they don't believe in the change that they're kind of seeing for the company, it's not their vision, it's nobody's vision in the end. Then it's just my P&L and whatever. I just want to harken back to that last question because I want to challenge my colleagues here. AI is probabilistic. It's been proven in many white papers that when you ask any of the models, what's 2 times 3? It guesstimates the number, and then when you look at what people believe in, DeepSeek and so on, show you how it rationalizes its thinking. That is actually a separate model, again, rationalizing what it thinks it needs to do, which is a probabilistic outcome of what it thinks, not what it actually calculates.
But I think
so that means that in the talent pool, you are going to see a gap. You have now trade assistants and so on that help you, and execution assistants that help you gather that information, right? The boring stuff that we all need to find. Those won't be trained because they won't be necessary. The trade lead or so can just quickly figure it out. They have a model, it shows them, oh, these are the clauses that you're looking for. Who's going to be trained and who's going to have the knowledge and understanding, and wait a minute, what it just invented here is wrong. So that's a challenge.
I was going to say exactly that.
Very, very interesting.
It's about training, right? Because not everyone understands the concept of these tools. So I think if the organization agrees that's the way forward and they choose the right tools applicable to the right processes or workflows or business use cases, the users have to be trained and educated in their use.
I agree, but I think that today, let's say we have been all used to do the things, right? So now you have in front of you an AI, a solution that gives you an answer, and you are able to challenge, because I did that, the result doesn't make any sense, I'm going to challenge. But I think about my daughter, right? She will be born in an AI society, in an AI world, where she will not be used to challenge, because AI will have been giving her the reply since the moment number one. So who is going to challenge that? How are we going to know if it's a probabilistic result that is right or a probabilistic result that is wrong? But I think that's a bit philosophical, maybe, for this panel, but it's interesting.
It's key to the question about talent, etc. I mean, maybe I'm just laboring your point, but you know, if you already know that, if you've been reading letters of credit for years, and then you can see that it's helping you match some dates of shipment or whatever it is, and it speeds up my life. It's like, great, I can double check that very quickly, and it saved me some time. But if I've got some new hires who have not had to trawl through these LCs and haven't built up any muscle memory, that experience where you are, you know, these will be some of the choppy waters that we need to get through, and that's why that sort of, you know, that gradual plateau contentment, find some incremental gains rather than, you know, maybe is it unintended consequences to all of this could be really quite high, couldn't they?
That's why, I mean, I think that...
Some closing remarks, and then we can maybe get some of the questions at this one. Yes.
Oh, I was just going to say, I fully agree with that. You know, buyer beware on some of this, because the AI will do hallucinations, and I think that's why it's actually especially good in the front office, because the traders, that's their entire job function they've been hired to do, is to distill uncertainty and to make decisions with that risk in mind, that the data could be wrong, the conclusions of the AI model could be wrong. And on the back office side, from a talent perspective, that's why I think that the popular term now is a prompt engineer, right? In other words, that's basically training people on how to use the AI and how to get the most out of it and to question the results properly.
But I think the kind of what I'm hearing there, and I had a conversation kind of earlier on in the coffee break. It's more beneficial as a tool to improve the efficiency of someone skilled than it is to try and replace or complement low-skilled people, because that's quite a dangerous combination.
Okay, let's try to answer two questions, and we finish here. There's one about we move. They have disappeared. We have so many. Okay. Can you please share a terrible experience of a failed digital implementation, and what have you learned? I don't know if anybody dares to do so. If not, I can share one myself. I have no problem.
The mind's blank on that one. I got nothing.
Yeah, we never had one of those either.
Never had, yeah, I understand. What I can share is, for example, in my case, in another company I worked in the past, we did a use case on predictive analytics. We wanted to predict the I think the US government, they share the yield of grains. I don't remember exactly, the USDA, one every 6 months. We did a partnership with IBM because they own one of the biggest weather forecast channels in US, right? The predictive algorithm and the solution was great. Indeed, after looking back, we have beaten the prediction of the US government, right, in that case. But the reality is that the market doesn't trade against what we were predicting. The market trades about what the US government is saying, even if they are far away from the reality than us, right? So at the end, it was a fantastic use case to learn about predictive analytics, but our research team didn't use it anymore, right? Because it doesn't give you any competitive advantage. So sometimes you don't get what you want, but at least you learned about a new technology, you learn about the possibilities. It helps you in that way. And then a last one, and then we'll leave it here. Which one would you like? After all the spending, what if the use? It's all about failure and not satisfaction. Let's move. Well, but after all the spending, let's imagine that you are not satisfied. Do you continue investing, or do you pivot into an old architecture while waiting for the next best option? So it's like you try a new thing, it doesn't work. What do? You come back to your legacy and wait for the next opportunity, or how do you handle these situations? I don't know.
Oh, I can answer that one. I can give a very unsatisfying answer.
Oh, I think everybody's looking for that.
I can help you out. So, first of all, if it's architecturally sound, it is going to help you in the future, right? Just like a Formula One team, sometimes you bet on a technology, you find out you've bet wrong. Then you better revert. But if you've bet right, but you're not done yet, you continue. So that takes expertise in what does it actually change in my business model, in how I operate, those kind of things. What are the business benefits that I'm chasing? And on the other end, am I actually capable of doing this, right? So when you talk about AI, if you want to go down that route that you build your own environment, you have to imagine you also have to sustain that entire ecosystem. It's multiple LLMs per week that are being launched, all increasing some kind of metric on one of those things. You need scientists, you need programmers, developers that sustain that environment for you. Are you going to be the leader in AI? Is that your role in the world? So, you have to ask yourself, if the answer is yes, of course, you double down, you go that route. If not, you don't.
Okay, thank you. I think Nadia is going to kick us out now, no? We are over time. Okay, anybody, any other comment? No?
I was just going to say we've been developing software, content, and data for 25 years, and we've made lots of mistakes. I think the key there is to make them quickly and move on.
Exactly.
But you always need to invest because everything costs money.
Fail, but fail fast, right?
And I think also, understanding, and this is really deep understanding of whether the fundamentals are still right. And that's the difference between something which is possibly not there yet or not finished or not perfect, but which has sound fundamentals, and something where you're building on shaky foundations, and if you don't let go of your sunk costs, you are going to keep sinking.
Okay. Thank you very much. It has been an absolute pleasure. What a panel. Congratulations to all our panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you.